This is a walkthrough video of task number 1 from the second AAT sample assessment for advanced synoptic. So task 1, 15 marks, will be computer marked, so tick boxes, drop downs, that sort of stuff, and it will be 15 marks marked by the computer. So this task is based on a workplace scenario separate to the rest of the assessment. An accountant, Wajid, has recently started work at Hook Limited, a large organisation with many employees. He is trying to apply the ethical code's conceptual framework to an ethical problem he is facing at work. He is currently evaluating threats to his fundamental principles. Right, so to resolve the matter, the conceptual framework states that Wajid must use, you can see I've just done this a minute ago, so the answer is his professional judgment. Now, if you weren't sure about this in the exam, don't forget you've got this reference material. So conceptual framework approach, if I was to click on there. Now, the problem with this, of course, is it's very wordy, but we can see here, in making that determination, the member shall exercise professional judgment. All right, so that's where that comes from. Right, secondly, identify whether there is a conflict to be resolved between the behaviour of Hook Limited's management and Sherry's personal values. So something I tend to do is read what's required before I read the blurb. So Sherry is an accountant who works for Hook Limited. George is a new trainee accountant. Sherry tells George that sometimes there is a conflict to be resolved between an individual personal values and the behaviour of their employer. Sherry personally values loyalty and fairness. So if we look at the first one there, loyalty, long-standing employees are allowed an extra half day's holiday for every 2 years of permanent employment. Well, she thinks loyalty is important. She'll be quite happy with that. So therefore, there is no conflict to resolve. And then employees are promoted on the basis of family or other close relationships. Well, that doesn't seem very fair because that's got nothing to do with your work. So if she's bothered about fairness, she will think that there's a conflict to resolve there. So yes. Right, next one. A potential customer of Hook Limited has asked Sherry to reveal confidential information about Hook Limited's cost structure and pricing strategy. The potential customer has offered to pay Sherry for this information. So clearly put a question around confidentiality. So Sherry may never disclose confidential information to any third party. Well, that's false because you are allowed to disclose confidential information if you have the authority of the person about what the information is about, or of course if there's a legal or professional duty to disclose. Second one, the threat that Sherry is facing to her compliance with the fundamental principles is a self-interest threat. So the fact that the customer has offered to pay for the information means there's something in it for Sherry. So yes, that is true. Thirdly, Sherry must resign immediately from Hook Limited as her integrity has been compromised by the offer from the potential customer. Well, no, she doesn't have to immediately resign. She needs to go through the resolution process. So again, if you weren't sure, I won't click on it, but you know, you could come to perhaps the ethical conflict resolution and have a look at what's said there. Right, part D. Ian is also an accountant with Hook Limited. The manager of one of Hook Limited's main suppliers has offered Ian gifts. Ian has known the manager for several years. So immediately it's that which makes it a familiarity threat. The other choice was intimidation. So familiarity, just a bit too friendly. And is it to his fundamental principle of objectivity or professional competence and due care? So objectivity is all about being fair and free from bias. So that's the one that's in question here. Ian is following the conflict resolution process in the ethical code in respect of an ethical dilemma at work. Ian has collected evidence and documented the process carefully so he can seek guidance on the dilemma from his friend, an accountant who works for another organisation. So quite clearly, confidentiality is the issue. Part F. Ellie is an accountant who works for a professional accountancy firm. She has a client who has been involved in concealing criminal property. Ellie has reported the client to the relevant authority and has told the client about this. So this is around proceeds of crime. So basically, if you suspect someone of proceeds of crime, terrorist funding, money laundering, you have a duty to report that, but you are also not allowed to tell the client that you've done that. Otherwise, this is the offence of tipping off. All right, so the other options here were money laundering. So she hasn't actually been involved in the money laundering. Failure to disclose, well, she has disclosed to the relevant authority, but where she's gone wrong is she has told the client about it. So it's the crime of tipping off. And then Luke is an accountant in practice working as a sole practitioner. He has discovered that a client has been money laundering. Luke should disclose confidential information directly to. Now, if he worked in practice in a biggish firm of accountants, it would be the money laundering reporting officer. But he's a sole practitioner, so he's on his own. So therefore, it will be the National Crime Agency. Lots of people think you have to tell HMRC, but that's not the case. That would be a breach of confidentiality.